Close your eyes and imagine Africa, not as we know it today, but as it was millions of years ago. Vast plains stretch endlessly beneath a blazing sun. Herds of antelope scatter across the grasslands. Lions stalk silently in the tall reeds, and among them, fragile figures walk upright. They are not yet us, but they are our ancestors. Their footprints mark the beginning of humanity's path. Welcome, everyone, to a journey back in time. Today, we're not just exploring history. We're exploring our own story, the story of how we became human, and it all begins on the magnificent continent of Africa. For a long time, the question, where did we come from, was one of life's greatest mysteries. But thanks to incredible scientific discoveries, we now know that Africa is the cradle of humanity. This isn't just a romantic idea. It's backed by mountains of evidence, from fossilized bones to our very own DNA. Let's travel to the Great Rift Valley, a massive geological trench that slices through eastern Africa. This dynamic landscape of volcanoes, lakes, and savannas was the perfect stage for evolution. It was here, around 6 to 7 million years ago, that our family tree split from that of the chimpanzees, our closest living relatives. Meet Sahelanthropus chidensis, one of our earliest known ancestors, discovered in Chad. This creature lived around 7 million years ago. While it had many ape-like features, it had one crucial difference. The position of its skull on the spine suggests it may have walked upright on 2 legs. This ability, known as bipedalism, was a game. Why? Because walking on 2 feet freed up the hands that could now carry food, tools, and even infants. This simple shift set our lineage on a completely new evolutionary path. As millions of years passed, our family tree grew more branches. We see figures like Orin and Ardipithecus, each adding a new piece to the puzzle. But the real star of the show arrived around 4 million years ago, Australopithecus. You've probably heard of Lucy, the famous Australopithecus afarensis skeleton discovered in Ethiopia. Lucy was small, but she walked upright. Her species roamed the African plains for over 1 million years. They were a bridge between our more ape-like ancestors and the first members of our own genus, Homo. Imagine their world. It was a place of immense danger and incredible opportunity. They had to outsmart predators, find food, and navigate a constantly changing environment. This pressure to adapt, to think, and to cooperate was the very engine of our evolution. It forged our intelligence and our social nature. Then, about 2.5 million years ago, a new character entered the scene. Homo habilis, or handyman. What made them special? Homo habilis was the first of our ancestors to consistently create and use stone tools. These weren't just random rocks. They were intentionally shaped to cut, scrape, and smash. This technological leap opened up a whole new world of food sources, like nutrient-rich bone marrow, which in turn fueled the growth of a larger, more complex brain. The brain and tool use create a powerful feedback loop. Better tools led to better nutrition, which led to bigger brains, which led to even better tools. From Homo habilis, we see the rise of Homo erectus, taller, stronger, and with an even bigger brain. Homo erectus was a true pioneer. They were the first of our ancestors to control fire, a monumental achievement that provided warmth, protection from predators, and a way to cook food, making it easier to digest and unlocking more nutrients. And they didn't stay put. Homo erectus became the first globetrotter, venturing out of Africa and spreading across Asia and Europe. The human journey to populate the planet had begun. For hundreds of thousands of years, different human species coexisted. In Europe and Asia, the Neanderthals thrived. But back in Africa, something new was brewing. Around 300,000 years ago, a new species emerged. Homo sapiens, that's us. Early Homo sapiens looked like us, and more importantly, they started to think like us. We see evidence of symbolic thought, art, jewelry, and complex burials. They developed more sophisticated tools and hunting strategies. They built complex social networks. Then, around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, a small group of Homo sapiens left Africa in what is known as the out-of-Africa migration. Every single person on Earth today who is not of purely African descent is a descendant of this small, brave group. Genetic studies have confirmed this incredible story. We all share a common African ancestry. Why did our ancestors succeed where others, like the Neanderthals, eventually vanished? The answer likely lies in our unique combination of creativity, cooperation, and adaptability. We weren't necessarily stronger, but we were perhaps better at sharing information, innovating, and working together to solve problems. From the first tentative upright steps on the savannah to our journey across the globe. The story of human origins is a testament to resilience and ingenuity. It's a story written in the ancient rocks of Africa, a story that connects every single one of us. We are all children of Africa. The next time you look in the mirror, remember the millions of years and the countless generations of ancestors who survived against all odds, passing down the spark of life that now burns in you. Their journey is our inheritance. Continuing the story that how did we go from simple grunts and gestures to the complex web of words and stories that shape our world? Let's journey back in time, tens of thousands of years, to the dawn of humanity. Picture this. Small bands of early humans, navigating a world filled with both incredible beauty and immense danger. Survival was a daily struggle. They were masters of their environment, crafting tools from stone and wood, harnessing the power of fire to cook their food and keep the cold at bay. These innovations were revolutionary, giving them a crucial edge. But survival required more than just tools and fire. It required something intangible, something that would ultimately prove to be our species' greatest superpower. Communication. Imagine a group of hunters, silently tracking a herd of mammoths across the vast, open plains. Their lives depend on this hunt. Without a shared system of communication, how do they coordinate their attack? How do they signal to one another that the prey is just over the next ridge, or that a predator is lurking nearby? How do they plan a strategy to corner an animal many times their size? It would be a chaotic, dangerous, and often fruitless endeavor. Simple gestures and pointing could only get them so far. A more sophisticated system was needed. This is where the magic begins. Slowly, over countless generations, sounds began to take on specific meanings. A certain cry might signal danger, another might mean food, and another could be a call to gather. These were the first building blocks. These sounds became signals. With repetition and shared understanding within the group, these signals became more reliable, more specific. They evolved into symbols, vocal representations of objects, actions, and ideas. A particular sequence of sounds no longer just meant danger. It could specify what kind of danger: a lion, a snake, a flash flood. Signals became symbols, and eventually, symbols became language. This leap was monumental. It was like our ancestors' brains were suddenly upgraded with new software. With language, humanity could now do something no other species could do on this scale: share complex knowledge across time and space. A child could sit at the feet of an elder and learn not just through imitation, but through spoken words, absorbing the accumulated wisdom of generations. They could learn which plants were safe to eat, how to read the seasons and the stars, and the best techniques for napping flint into a sharp point. Knowledge was no longer locked away in a single individual's mind, destined to be lost when they died. It could be passed on, preserved, and built upon. A hunter, returning to the camp, could now do more than just point in a general direction. He could describe precisely where the herd had gone, how many animals there were, and the easiest path to reach them. A mother could do more than just pull her child close. She could explain why a certain area was dangerous, painting a picture of the risks with her words. Language was memory. It allowed a group to create a collective pool of experience far greater than any single person's. But it was more than just a tool for practical information. Language unlocked a new dimension of the human mind: imagination. It gave us the ability to talk about things that weren't right in front of us. We could discuss the past, plan for the future, and even conceive of things that didn't exist at all. A shared plan for tomorrow's hunt, a memory of a distant ancestor, a warning about a hypothetical threat. All of this became possible. Language was power. It was the power to cooperate, to plan, and to create a shared reality. And with this power, humanity became storytellers. Imagine the scene, one that has been repeated millions of times throughout our history. The day's work is done. The group is gathered around the flickering warmth of a fire. The darkness pushes in from all sides, filled with the unknown sounds of the night. In the circle of light, an elder begins to speak. This is where culture is born. Around the fire, myths were created to explain the mysteries of the universe. Why does the sun rise and set? Where do we go when we die? Stories of heroic ancestors, cunning trickster spirits, and powerful creator gods gave order and meaning to a chaotic world. Dreams were shared, no longer just fleeting images in a single person's sleep, but narratives that could be explored and interpreted by the group. And crucial lessons were taught. Stories became the vehicles for morality, social norms, and survival strategies. A fable about a boy who wandered too far from the group was a far more memorable and effective warning than a simple command. Through these stories, told and retold, humanity was no longer just surviving. We were beginning to think, we were asking why. We were reflecting on our place in the cosmos. We were building identities, creating traditions, and weaving the intricate tapestry of culture. The world inside our heads became just as important as the world outside. Language allowed us to build communities, not just of shared space, but of shared minds, shared beliefs, and shared stories. It was the final, critical step that transformed a clever ape into the thinking, dreaming, and world-building species we are today. From the first meaningful grunt to the epic poems and scientific theories of our modern world. The journey of language is the journey of humanity itself. It's the invisible architecture that supports our societies, the engine of our innovation, and the heart of our art. It is the tool we use to pull ourselves out of the prehistoric darkness and into the light of civilization. The next time you have a conversation, write an email, or get lost in a good book, take a moment to appreciate this incredible gift from our ancestors. It's the most powerful tool we've ever invented. Ever wondered when humans stopped just surviving and started thinking? I mean, really thinking. Asking those huge, mind-bending questions that still keep us up at night. Well, to find the answer, we have to travel way, way back. Back before cities, before empires, before even the written word. We're going back to the very dawn of humanity. Imagine a world lit only by fire and stars. A world where every rustle in the bushes could be a predator, where every sunrise was a victory. This was the reality for our earliest ancestors. For hundreds of thousands of years, their lives were a relentless cycle of hunting, gathering, and seeking shelter. Their tools were simple extensions of their hands, sharp stones for cutting, heavy ones for crushing. Their world was immediate, physical, and brutally honest. Survival was the only goal. But then, something incredible started to happen. Amidst the struggle, a spark ignited, a new kind of light, not from a fire, but from within the human mind. We see the first glimmers of this in their tools. They're not just functional anymore. A handux isn't just a sharp rock. It's symmetrical, it's balanced, it's beautiful. Why spend extra time and effort to make a tool aesthetically pleasing when a cruder version would work just as well? This wasn't about survival. This was the first whisper of art, of pride in one's creation. And it didn't stop there. In caves from France to Indonesia, we find the first masterpieces. Stencils of hands pressed against a rock, surrounded by blown pigment, saying, "I was here." Majestic paintings of bison, horses, and mammoths, so full of life they almost seemed to move in the flickering torchlight. These weren't just doodles. Many of these paintings are in the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the caves. Getting there would have been a dangerous journey. Why? What compelled them to crawl into the belly of the earth to create this art? Were these hunting rituals, hoping to capture the spirit of the animal? Were they stories of great hunts? Or were they simply an expression of awe for the powerful creatures they shared the world with? We may never know for sure, but we know it was deeply meaningful. They weren't just painting what they saw, they were painting what they felt. Then we find the carvings, small figures, sculpted from mammoth ivory or stone. The famous Venus of Willendorf, for example. She's not a realistic portrait of a woman. She's an idea, an icon of fertility, of life, of abundance. These weren't just toys. They were powerful symbols, objects imbued with meaning and maybe even magic. They carried these symbols with them, a tangible connection to their beliefs and hopes for the future. And what about their relationship with each other, and with the great mystery of death? We start to see evidence of deliberate burials. This is huge. It shows they weren't just leaving their dead behind. They were placing them carefully, sometimes in a specific position, sometimes with grave goods, tools, ornaments, or even flowers, as pollen analysis has shown in some sites. Why would you bury a valuable tool with someone who can no longer use it? Because you believe they're going somewhere else, a place where they might need it. This is the beginning of a concept of an afterlife, the first attempt to grapple with the finality of death. It shows compassion, love, and a belief in something beyond the physical world. Think about what's happening here. This is the birth of abstract thought, the ability to think about things that aren't right in front of you. The past, the future, the unseen world of spirits, the meaning of a symbol. This cognitive leap is what separates us from every other species on the planet. A deer doesn't wonder about the stars. A lion doesn't compose a song about the beauty of the sunset. But our ancestors did. Even in these early times, culture began to bloom. Simple carvings, painted stones, and rituals around the fire hinted at something greater. Humanity was not just surviving the world, we were beginning to interpret it, to give it meaning, to ask questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What lies beyond the stars? These questions would echo across millennia, shaping religions, philosophies, and sciences. But their roots lie here, in the flickering firelight of our ancient ancestors. They looked up at the same moon, the same constellations we see today, and they wondered. That sense of wonder is their greatest legacy. It's the driving force behind every discovery, every invention, every work of art. As they gathered around their fires, sharing food and warmth, they also shared stories. They didn't have writing, so oral tradition was everything. They passed down knowledge about which plants were safe to eat, where to find water, how to track animals. But they also passed down their myths, their beliefs, their history. In these stories, they explained the creation of the world, the changing of the seasons, the behavior of the sun and moon. They created a shared reality, a cultural web that bound their small communities together. This ability to cooperate in large numbers, based on shared myths and beliefs, is what allowed Homo sapiens to eventually outcompete other hominins, like the Neanderthals. It wasn't just about being stronger or having better tools. It was about having a better story, a story that could unite 100 or even 1,000 individuals toward a common goal. And so, this wasn't just the dawn of culture, it was the dawn of us. The moment we became storytellers, artists, and philosophers. The moment we started to build a world, not just of stone and bone, but of ideas and dreams. Every cathedral, every scientific theory, every novel, every song can trace its lineage back to a painted hand on a cave wall. It's a humbling thought, isn't it, that our most sophisticated achievements are built on a foundation laid by people we can never know, whose language we can never hear, but we can feel their presence. We can see the world through their eyes when we look at their art. We can sense their curiosity when we look up at the night sky and ask the same questions they did. Who are we? Why are we here? What lies beyond the stars? The journey to answer those questions started in the deep past, and it's a journey that continues with us today. We are the heirs to that first spark of wonder. So the next time you look at a piece of modern art, or listen to a powerful piece of music, or ponder the mysteries of the universe, take a moment to remember where it all came from. It came from a deep, ancient, and profoundly human need to do more than just survive. The need to understand, to create, and to connect. Have you ever wondered what makes us us? What spark ignited in our distant ancestors that set humanity on its incredible journey? Let's travel back in time, hundreds of thousands of years, to a world very different from our own. A world of vast savannas, towering ice sheets, and megafauna. It was a world shared by many different types of early humans, like the powerful Neanderthals and the mysterious Denisovans. But then, a new player emerged on the scene. One that would change everything. Homo sapiens. So, what made them so different? At first glance, you might notice compared to their more robust relatives, Homo sapiens were leaner, with lighter builds. This wasn't a weakness. It was a superpower. Their bodies were perfectly adapted for endurance. They could track animals for miles and miles, running them to exhaustion under the hot African sun. This persistence hunting strategy gave them a reliable source of protein and fat, crucial fuel for what was happening inside their skulls. And that's where the real magic was happening. The brain of Homo sapiens was significantly larger, especially in the prefrontal cortex, part responsible for complex thought, planning, and imagination. This wasn't just a matter of being a little bit smarter, it was a complete cognitive revolution. While other hominins were excellent at reacting to the present moment, Homo sapiens began to live in the past, present, and future all at once. They could remember the details of a hunt from a year ago, apply those lessons to the present, and plan a more effective strategy for the next season. They looked at a piece of flint and didn't just see a rock. They saw the potential for a sharper spearhead, a more delicate blade, or a tool to carve other tools. This ability to see what could be was a game changer. Their toolkits became more diverse, more specialized, and more refined than anything that had come before. They created things like spear throwers or atlotls, which allowed them to hunt dangerous prey from a safer distance. They crafted bone needles to sew fitted clothing, enabling them to survive in colder climates as they expanded out of Africa. But perhaps the most profound difference wasn't in their bodies or their tools, but in their minds. Homo sapiens were the first true storytellers. They didn't just communicate about where to find food or how to avoid a predator. They started to share ideas about things that weren't physically there. They began to build a shared reality. Think about the incredible cave paintings found in places like Lascaux in France or Chauvet Cave. These aren't just doodles. They are vibrant, dynamic depictions of hunts, of spiritual beliefs, of the world as they saw it and as they imagined it. They carved intricate figures from mammoth ivory, like the famous lion man, a creature that is half human, half... This statue isn't a representation of something they saw. It's a representation of an idea, a myth, a concept born from pure imagination. This is the birth of abstract thought. They sang songs around the campfire, told stories of heroic ancestors, and developed complex rituals. They buried their dead with care, sometimes with objects like tools or ornaments, suggesting a belief in an afterlife, or a respect for the individual that went beyond their physical existence. They imagined gods, spirits that inhabited the natural world, and cosmic orders that explained the rising of the sun and the changing of the seasons. This is what truly set them apart. Survival was no longer the only goal. Life became about more than just finding the next meal. It became about creating meaning, about building connections, and about sharing a collective identity. Humanity was becoming culture. This web of shared stories, myths, and beliefs is what allowed Homo sapiens to cooperate in unprecedentedly large numbers. You can't get 100 Neanderthals to work together on a single project, but you can get thousands of Homo sapiens to cooperate because they share a belief in a common god, a nation, or a story. This ability to weave fictions and believe in them collectively is the secret to our success. It's what allowed us to build cities, create empires, and even walk on the moon. It all started with that spark of imagination in the minds of our ancestors, painting bison on a cave wall by the flickering light of a tallow lamp. The journey from a small, vulnerable group of hunter-gatherers in Africa to a globally dominant species is the greatest story ever told. And it's our story. Imagine a world teeming with life, a world of immense danger and incredible opportunity. Here, among the tall grasses and acacia trees, our earliest ancestors took their first hesitant steps. They were not the strongest, not the fastest, but they had something special, a spark of ingenuity and an unbreakable will to survive. These were the Australopithecines, fragile apes walking on two legs. This simple act of standing upright, known as bipedalism, was a revolutionary leap. It freed their hands. For the first time, our ancestors could carry food, tools, and their young over long distances. Their eyes, now higher off the ground, could scan the horizon for predators or promise. This wasn't just a change in posture, it was a change in perspective. The world looked different from 2 feet, and this new view would change everything. They were no longer just surviving the present. They were beginning to plan for the future. Life was a constant struggle. They gathered fruits, nuts, and roots, and scavenged what they could from the kills of larger predators. But this precarious existence was about to be transformed by a breakthrough innovation. One of our ancestors, perhaps out of curiosity, perhaps out of desperation, struck one stone against another. The result was a sharp edge, a tool. This was the birth of technology. The old dhow and choppers, as we called them, were simple, but they were game. Suddenly, our ancestors could butcher carcasses, crush bones for marrow, and dig for tubers more efficiently. They were no longer just subjects of their environment. They were starting to shape it. This new tool-making ability marked the arrival of a new player on the scene, Homo habilis, the handyman, with a slightly larger brain and a knack for invention. Homo habilis demonstrated that intelligence, not just brawn, was the key to survival. They weren't just using tools, they were crafting them with purpose. Each flake struck from a core stone was a decision, a plan, an idea made real. This feedback loop between hand and brain, between action and thought, spurred our cognitive development. Our brains grew larger, more complex, fueled by the richer diet that tools provided. We were becoming smarter, more adaptable. Then came another monumental leap forward, one that would illuminate the darkness and warm the cold nights. Fire. Initially, our ancestors probably harvested fire from natural sources, like lightning strikes. They would have been terrified at first, but soon they would have recognized its power. Fire provided warmth, light, and protection from nocturnal predators. It fundamentally changed their social lives. Instead of scattering at dusk, they gathered around the glow of the hearth. This was the first living room, the first community center. Here, bonds were forged in the flickering light. Even more importantly, fire changed what we ate. Cooking food made it easier to chew and digest, unlocking more calories and nutrients. This protein-rich, high-energy diet fueled the growth of our most precious organ, the brain. The era of Homo erectus, the upright man, was powered by the cooking fire, with even larger brains and more sophisticated tools, like the iconic Acheulean hand axe. Homo erectus was a force to be reckoned with. These were the first great explorers, venturing out of Africa and spreading across Asia and Europe. They were driven by curiosity, by need, by the same restless spirit that defines us today. But perhaps the most profound transformation was one we can't dig up or date. It was the birth of language. We don't know exactly when or how it started. Maybe it began with simple grunts and gestures, evolving over millennia into complex syntax and vocabulary. But its impact was immeasurable. Language allowed us to share knowledge, to coordinate hunts, to teach our children, and to warn of danger. It allowed us to build complex social structures and cooperate on a scale never seen before in the animal kingdom. And with language came stories. Around the crackling fires, our ancestors began to weave narratives. They told tales of the hunt, of the ancestors, of the spirits that animated the world around them. These stories were not just entertainment. They were a way of making sense of a chaotic world, of creating a shared identity, a culture. They transmitted values, history, and wisdom from one generation to the next. In telling stories, we began to understand ourselves. We were no longer just a collection of individuals. We were a people, bound together by a shared past and a common future. And so, the first chapter of our story ends. From fragile apes to toolmakers, firekeepers, and storytellers, humanity had taken its first steps. We had learned to stand tall, to shape stone, to tame fire, to speak, and to gather together. These were not just survival skills. They were the foundations of everything we would become. They were the building blocks of civilization, the first verses in the epic poem of our species. This is the story of us. Have you ever looked at a map and wondered how we, Homo sapiens, ended up on every single continent? It's a story of incredible courage, unimaginable hardship, and a relentless spirit of exploration that began over 70,000 years ago on the vast plains of Africa. This is the story of our greatest journey. Our tale begins in Africa, the cradle of humanity. For thousands of years, our ancestors lived and evolved there. They were hunter-gatherers, living in small, tie-net groups, perfectly adapted to the African savanna. But something changed. We don't know the exact reason. Maybe it was a shift in climate, a depletion of resources, or perhaps it was just human curiosity, that innate desire to see what lies beyond the horizon. Whatever the trigger, small bands of modern humans began to venture out of their homeland. This wasn't a single, organized exodus. It was a slow multi-generational trickle of people, pushing the boundaries of their world, one step at a time. The first major hurdle was the formidable Sahara Desert. Today, it's a vast sea of sand. But back then, there were periods when it was greener, with rivers and lakes, creating corridors for migration. Still, crossing it was a monumental challenge. These early pioneers followed coastlines and river valleys, moving into the Middle East, which became a crucial crossroads for all future migrations. From this crossroads, humanity split. One group headed east, following the coast of the Arabian Peninsula, across India, and into Southeast Asia. Imagine this journey. They encountered entirely new ecosystems, strange plants, and unfamiliar animals. They had to learn which fruits were safe to eat, how to hunt new prey, and how to build shelters from different materials. Every day was a lesson in survival. These coastal explorers were incredibly successful. Within just a few thousand years, by around 50,000 years ago, they had reached Australia. Now, think about that for a second. Reaching Australia meant crossing the open ocean. Even though sea levels were lower, there were still significant stretches of water separating Asia from the Australian continent. This implies they must have built some form of seafaring vessel, like rafts or simple boats. This wasn't just walking anymore. This was the dawn of maritime exploration. They were the world's first sailors, navigating by stars and currents, guided by faith and a desire for a new home. Once there, they adapted to a completely unique continent, with its giant marsupials and arid interior, founding one of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth. Meanwhile, back at the Middle Eastern crossroads, another group of humans turned west and north, towards Europe. This was a completely different challenge. Instead of tropical coasts, they faced a continent in the grip of an ice age. It was cold, brutally cold. The landscape was dominated by glaciers and tundra, and it was already inhabited by another human species, the Neanderthals. For thousands of years, we coexisted with our Neanderthal cousins. we likely competed for resources, but recent genetic evidence shows we also interbred. A small percentage of DNA in modern humans of non-African descent comes from Neanderthals, a permanent genetic echo of this ancient encounter. Adapting to Ice Age Europe required incredible innovation. Our ancestors developed more sophisticated tools, tailored clothing from animal hides, and created new hunting techniques to take down megafauna like woolly mammoths and giant elk. They took shelter in caves, and it is on the walls of these caves that they left behind the first great masterpieces of human art. Breathtaking paintings that still speak to us across tens of thousands of years. While some went west, others pushed deeper into Asia, moving north into the vast, cold steppes of Siberia. Life here was even more extreme than in Ice Age Europe. The winters were longer, darker, and colder. To survive, these groups became expert mammoth hunters, relying on these massive beasts for food, clothing, tools from their bones, and even fuel from their fat. They lived in dwellings constructed from mammoth bones and hides, enduring conditions that are almost unimaginable to us today. They were tough, resilient, and they kept pushing forward. It was from this Siberian population that the final great chapter of human migration began, the peopling of the Americas. Around 20,000 years ago, so much of the world's water was locked up in glaciers that a land bridge, known as Beringia, connected Siberia to Alaska. Hunter-gatherer groups, likely following herds of game, walked across this bridge and into a new world. They had discovered two entirely new continents. From Alaska, they spread south with astonishing speed. They moved down the Pacific coast, through the Rocky Mountains, across the Great Plains, into the jungles of Central America, and all the way down to the southernmost tip of South America, Tierra del Fuego. In just a few thousand years, humans had populated an entire hemisphere, adapting to every conceivable environment, from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests. By about 12,000 years ago, our species, Homo sapiens, had done something no other species had ever done. We had colonized the entire planet. From our humble beginnings in Africa, we had walked, sailed, and persevered our way to every corner of the globe. This great migration wasn't just a physical journey, it was a journey of the mind. It forced us to innovate, to adapt, to create new technologies, new social structures, and new ways of understanding the world. The legacy of this journey is all around us. It's in the diversity of human cultures, languages, and physical appearances we see today. Each adaptation to a new environment left its mark, creating the beautiful mosaic of humanity. We are all descendants of those brave explorers. Their curiosity, their resilience, and their unshakable will to survive are written into our DNA. So the next time you look at a globe, remember the epic, 70,000-year-long journey that connects us all. We are all one family, with a shared story of incredible adventure. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through time as fascinating as I do, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the human story. See you next time.